And we're going live on Facebook. All right, everybody's coming in. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Let's give it a couple of minutes just to give everybody a chance to get in here.
While we wait for everybody to join, we usually start at 3 after. Maybe, it feels like we're starting to get teased with a little bit of that spring weather. I know there's still some cold coming to many areas of the country, but right now, I gotta tell you, 72 feels pretty nice.
Yeah, here too. But listen to this, Sam. We're actually getting our first severe weather
I
on
saw that.
Friday.
I
Yeah,
saw it.
they're saying we have a chance of tornadoes. And I'm like, well, I'll take that over that snowstorm and ice storm that we had a couple of months ago any day. But
Yeah, it'd be
I don't know about you, but I'm one of those people where I'll be sitting out on the front porch and watching whenever these major thunderstorms come through to see if I can see a tornado drop out of the cloud.
Well, I can relate. I mean, having spent most of my life in Florida, yes, we would often watch hurricanes and tropical storms and thunderstorms sort of approach right before we sought shelter. But yeah, I saw the southeast too. I think the eastern Tennessee, North Georgia areas are also looking at some severe weather, just like St. Louis area. So yeah, we'll be thinking about our neighbors in the southeast as well.
Yeah, the weather just seems to be getting crazier and crazier every year, like more extreme. Like this is the first time St. Louis has had a real winter in a long time, and it was a real winter. I don't think it was ever going away.
You guys had a winter that just sort of stuck around
It,
this
it
year,
was it
that's
was
for sure.
it was rough.
Yeah. Well, I guess let's get into it and
Yeah.
talk about our topic. I think it's a good one. I'm excited for this one because it's going to be less about doom and gloom, more about really just evaluating whether or not we've got a stack that's up to date and current, or maybe there might be an opportunity to do something a little better, and using a nice cut and dry audit to identify those opportunities.
Yeah. All right. So I am Mandy Sullivan. I am an executive account manager here at Visory, and I have my partner in crime, Sam Schumacher. He is the senior director of solutioning here at Visory, and we are both very excited that you guys came to join us today. We're hoping that you can leave here with an idea on how to perform a security audit at your own firm, and leave here with a couple of to-do actions on what you need to make sure that the firm is secure. First, we're going to be talking about the importance of a security audit, and then we're going to be talking about best practices for software and hardware security. And then my favorite, empowering your team with training. And then we'll show you how you guys can take some action today.
And as always, we'll follow up tomorrow with the recording, and I think usually the
Oh, yeah.
slides, and of course the takeaway that we have at the end. It's a QR code to actually get your hands on that security audit. So just housekeeping there. All of that will be sent out as a follow up, and please feel free to use the Q&A box if any questions do come up as we're going through this, and we'll tackle those as we go.
All right. So why is it important to conduct a security audit? Well, because not only are you protecting your business's sensitive data, but your clients have also entrusted you to protect their data too. And by conducting this security audit, you're going to be identifying vulnerabilities and detecting weaknesses in the security measures that you already have put in place for your systems, your processes, your networks, your applications, before that the bad actor can get in there and exploit them. It is also important to do a security audit because it's going to ensure the ongoing compliance with the regulations that the IRS and the FTC, which have set for you. In the event that there's a breach, there could be hefty fines or legal consequences these days if you have not did your due diligence for and met these security measures. It'll also help you with protecting and improving incident response time in the event of attack. Have you ever just asked yourself, like, if your firm were to get hit with an attack today and just comes to an abrupt halt for 2 to 3 days, right here during the peak of tax season, what is that going to do to your firm? How much is it going to cost you? By doing a security audit, you can ensure that you have the business continuity and disaster recovery already in place to reduce and minimize that downtime. So in the event that a bad actor does get into your system, you already have plans in place that you're not going to be down for 2 to 3 days. You can just activate those plans and you'll be back up and running. Another big reason that it's good to do a security audit, and I think that this is one that a lot of our CPA firms forget, and you want to look for those internal threats, such as unauthorized access, data misuse, employee negligence, or actually even disgruntled employees. And this is where I like Sam to always come in and tell us about his construction company and what happened when their controller left the company.
Yeah, it was a client of ours that was a client for several years ago that was using us for hosting their Sage software, and they downsized, they took it back in-house. It was what made sense for their business at the time, and sort of that peak COVID era. And unfortunately, the controller, when they left the company, they wiped it all. The business owner thought, no problem, we've got backups. Surely we have backups. Unfortunately, the most viable backup was 18 months old, and they were within weeks of a new audit. So they were in a tough spot. They called us asking if we could help, but because of our data hygiene policies, all of their backups had been deleted from our system years ago. But I think it really underscores the importance of not only having a backup strategy, but testing the recovery of that backup on a periodic basis. And that should be a part of that risk assessment, or that risk assessment that you're doing internally, thinking about business continuity and thinking about, where's my data? What happens if that data gets deleted? How do I recover, and how quickly can I make that recovery possible?
Sure. I've heard you tell that story so many times, and every time I just cringe thinking about what that poor company must have went through
We've
right
got
before that
we've got
audit.
some doozies, don't we? We've got some
Yeah.
doozies. If MFA comes up later, I can tell that one about not having multi-factor and what that'll do for you.
Yeah, there's some crazy ones out there. Overall, just by doing a security audit, and I think that people hear the word audit and they automatically think it's got to be some big, robust thing. It really isn't that scary. And you'll see, shortly through a simple check the box. Do you have this? If this happens, do you have this? But if you just do this simple security audit, you're going to boost security awareness in your firm, teach your staff how to have a security first mentality, and which is ultimately just going to save you money in the long run in the event that a breach does happen.
Absolutely. And so we're going to jump sort of back and forth with policy and best practice and some tech. One of the things that we've seen evolve over the last few years is within our industry, all of the technology companies that have built threat hunting agents. So you think about traditional antivirus, now there's threat hunting. All of those threat hunting engines, many of the mail filtering agents at this point, some technologies that are used to help control web traffic and who can access what inside of your network. They're all starting to build some measure of AI and or machine learning into their tactics. So really, as we look at this and we look at the modernization of threat hunting, we look at the modernization of cybersecurity protocols, those technology companies are recognizing an opportunity to leverage AI for the sole purpose of improving their product, but also combating the fact that the bad guys have unfettered access to AI now too. So when you think about the general availability of these large language models and these coding models, now we've moved from a time when you really had to be good at coding. You really had to be a technologist to go out and write ransomware. Now there are literally a series of sites that you could use to go and write malware, write ransomware, bring it back in and clean it in ways that makes it somewhat undetectable. You could even sell it in a worldwide ransomware as a service, malware as a service type business model. So things have changed. The threat landscape has drastically changed in the last 2 years, significantly, even more over the last 5 to 10 years. And AI is really driving that. And so seeing all of these leaders in cybersecurity that are now using AI and machine learning to strengthen their approach and bring better, more reliable alerts, reducing the false positives, really taking that proactive approach to identifying when there's a business email compromise event that's starting to take place, or being able to recognize when a piece of malware is about to be deployed and become active within a network or on an endpoint. So when we talk about doing an audit of our security approach, we should be looking at our tooling, looking at the tools that maybe your managed service provider has deployed, or looking at the tools that maybe you've deployed, and asking them, what are you doing to stay state of the art? How does this compare with some of those products that are out there that are really leveraging this smart technology to become even faster, even better, even more reliable when it comes to protecting my data?
All right, let's talk about replacing the outdated traditional antivirus and upgrading it to the next gen antivirus. So cyber threats are constantly evolving. With the traditional AV alone, it's not going to keep us safe from advanced attacks like ransomware, zero-day exploits, which is a great show on Netflix that I'm watching right now, if you guys haven't seen that one yet, with Robert De Niro, and fileless malware. Next-gen antivirus uses machine learning and behavioral analysis in real-time cloud intelligence to help you stay ahead of threats before they even happen. Now, traditional antivirus only protects you against known threats. So if it knows about the threat today, but say tomorrow there's a new threat that's out there, unless that Webroot or McAfee puts an update out, so with that new threat as a known, you're not protected against that new known threat. But since that next gen antivirus is constantly in real time updating through AI, and learning about new signature-based threats out there, it's constantly protecting you and learning in new ways that the traditional antivirus just doesn't cover it anymore. Recently, I had a firm reach out to me because they needed to have their WIS done, thinking that just by completing that document that they were in compliance with the IRS. One of the things that myself and the security engineer do whenever somebody wants us to help them with their WISP is we go through all the boxes that the IRS wants you to check before we complete the WISP for you. When we went through the security measures with them that they had in place, we kind of discovered that the only antivirus that their current IT company had installed on their computers was just what came with the computer. So Velco and I, we let the partner of this firm know that not only is this not safe for their data and for their clients' data, but it also knocks them out of regulation with the FTC and the IRS. And this was something that they were going to need to address. And the IT person was really concerned about next-gen solutions because he thought that they would be clunky, slow down productivity for their team, and just cause some issues. And so we got them to agree to let us to do a trial with 10 of their staff members. This was a very large firm. And they did a trial with us with 10 of their staff members. And once we got our solution installed on their computer, we noticed right away that 6 of them had already had malware placed on the computer where the bad actor was just in the computer, just watching. And their traditional antivirus, or what came with their computer, never even picked it up. If they wouldn't have agreed to let us do that trial, they would have never even known. And with our solution, not only did they find that there was bad actors on there, but our solution starts to remediate it immediately, quarantines it away from the rest of the data, starts to remediate it. So thank goodness that they agreed with us to do a next-gen antivirus trial. But then taking it even one step farther with our solution, not just next-gen antivirus, but we actually manage it for you. So in the event that there is a breach on the computer or something is sitting on the computer that just the software alone cannot remediate, it also sends a ticket to our security operations center. So we have 24/7. Our security team is watching over your endpoints, your data, making sure that everything is safe. And if it starts to notice anything malicious, automatically sends a ticket to where our team can get on it and look into it to see if something further needs to be done. So it's really important for you going forward to make sure that, you know, you are staying up to date. The bad actors are constantly evolving. The malware, the ransomware, the zero-day exploits are constantly evolving. We need to make sure that we are constantly evolving our security measures to stay up to date with what is happening out there.
And I think what was really unique about that example that you gave us was that was a big firm, relatively speaking. So they had
Yeah.
what, 75, 85 users?
90. They had 90 users and they were all across the country and they were
Yeah.
still trying to piecemeal their IT with, just like a local IT guy and thankfully, that they
Yeah.
reached out to us and just wanted the WISP done.
Yeah, it was great that we were able to help them with that threat hunting and work out a kind of co-managed relationship with their IT provider
Absolutely.
because we didn't
Absolutely.
displace them, right? They're still in the picture. We just took over some of the security aspects
Correct.
with. Yeah,
Yep.
that's great.
So I left this slide in here, even though that we kind of already talked about it, but this is just going to show you some of the differences between what a traditional antivirus does for you compared to what like a Visory's managed attacks and response plan will do for you. I wanted to keep this slide in here basically so you guys would have it whenever you go back to look at the deck tomorrow, or if you have any questions about something that we might have covered. Just so you can look and see the differences between the two.
Got it. Yeah, we covered off on the zero-day
Yep.
exploits. I think the device agnostic kind of thing is also super important. A lot of these next gen agents work the same, so you don't lose any functionality if you're deploying to a Mac and Windows hybrid type of customer base. That's awesome.
Mhm.
When it comes to hardware, so speaking of endpoints, when it comes to hardware, there are some things that, as a part of your security assessment or your risk assessment, your audit, all kinds of things we could call it, there are some things that you should be thinking about when it comes to hardware. It's always a best practice to have a regular hardware life cycle sort of replacement strategy. So, as technology changes, new and improved security measures start to get built into endpoints. We usually recommend a replacement timeline of 4 to 5 years for endpoints. So replacing those Lenovo's and those Dells, those laptops that we might be using for work. Good to have a replacement strategy so that not only can you budget for the replacements, but you're also in a lot of ways enabling uptime. Think about an old computer. How many times have we in our personal lives have computers that have gotten up into the 8, 9 year old range and they're running really slow, they're lagging, they're running out of disk space. When we think about that from a professional perspective, we don't want any of our teammates experiencing those kinds of issues because of aging hardware. So we want to make sure that they're always on a supported device. It's not end of life. It can support the most up-to-date operating system. And on that note, Windows 10 Pro, keep in mind that is reaching end of life in October of this year. So if you are still running Windows 10, you will want to get upgraded to Windows 11 before October. And speaking of hardware, not every computer is going to be compatible with that upgrade. So you may find that it might be time to replace a laptop or two, but definitely take a look at your asset inventory and make sure that you've got a strategy for getting upgraded to Windows 11 so that you can make sure that those patches are coming through. Regular patching is critical from a cybersecurity standpoint, because often those patches are solving security holes. So as Microsoft identifies issues, some things that can be exploited, those get pushed through in patches. So it's not always about just updating drivers or having a new feature released. It's often a security based patch that's coming through. You'll also want to think about the BYOD situation, so the bring your own device. As things have evolved and as we've moved from desktop software to more SaaS, so all that web-based software, it's opened up a lot more possibilities for our teammates, especially our remote teammates, to use personal devices. You will want to think about that from a risk mitigation perspective and consider whether or not that's something that your firm should be participating in. You may already have a policy on this. If you don't, it's worth considering. We're starting to see a lot more firms trending in the direction of not allowing bring your own device. So it's company issued laptops, and it's device access control. So they're limiting access to data and to tools, specifically on those managed devices. And for people that don't have a managed device, or maybe they don't want to ship laptops to everyone, we're actually starting to see a lot more cloud adoption again. So going back into those remote hosted environments with those virtual desktops and restricting access into those virtual desktops, which are managed. So being able to control the content and the security is one of the drivers that we're seeing in the marketplace today of adopting more and more of that virtual desktop technology. So we talked about updates, talked about access control, and then of course, getting rid of the old stuff, especially when it comes to disk drives. You don't want to keep those around, especially if they're not encrypted. So any of those old drives that you might have lingering, we want to make sure you have a safe disposal plan for those as well. Continuing with hardware, we talked about BYOD. I think I probably covered off on all of this. So yeah, I would say just have an asset inventory, understand your replacement life cycle, so that you can budget for that on an annual basis and make a decision about BYOD.
All right, let's talk about training. So phishing attacks are one of the most common and dangerous cyber threats today. It's about 90% of all attacks on firms come from a phishing attack. This is where an individual tricks you into revealing sensitive information like passwords, financial details, any other company data. And the thing about it is that these attacks are targeted on people and not technology. That's why cybersecurity awareness training is so critical to building a strong defense for your CPA firm. The really scary thing is that it just takes one click. Sam, I was reading in Accounting Today the other day about a small firm in Georgia that lost $450,000. I think this was about a month ago because an employee clicked on a malicious link. When they clicked on the link, it put malware in their system, in their network, and it encrypted all of their data and brought the business to a complete halt. And they had no business continuity, no backups, no disaster recovery in place. They were just completely shut down. The awful thing about it is not only did they have to suffer that financial loss of $450,000, but they also had to suffer a reputational loss too, because you have to tell your clients within 72 hours if their financial data had been compromised during an attack. And not only do you have to tell them, but a lot of times you have to start to supply them with like credit checking and monitoring so that they can make sure that they're safe. This is just one of the reasons why it is absolutely critical. And having a cybersecurity training program to where you're teaching your team how to look at emails, and judge if something is legit, looking for just little small minor things that can make a legit email, but it just might have one letter off that makes it illegit. So teaching your team how to do that. I know with our solution advisory, we put like you through a 45-minute training where it talks about all the latest phishing attacks out there, as well as the other social engineering scams that are going on out there, and teaches your team how to be alert for those. But then also we take it a step farther and we actually test your employees. So we'll send random phishing emails, and if they click on something that they shouldn't and fall for it, then we re-enroll them in remediation training just so that they become more aware. And the next time, probably because they're embarrassed by all of their peers and their boss, the next time they're really going to look on that email a little more closely before they decide to start clicking on something.
One of the other things I really love about that platform from a business perspective is the reporting, being able to export completion reports for cybersecurity insurance companies and be able to show evidence. So it's not just an attestation saying, yep, we absolutely do quarterly cybersecurity awareness training and testing. It's being able to show evidence. Here's evidence of everyone on my team that's completed this, how often, and how they're performing against these simulated attacks that are being delivered intentionally to measure that click prone percentage. So, and then in addition to that, showing the click prone percentage, and what we generally see is it dropping over
Yeah.
time. So it might start out, 30, 40, 50%. And then over time, as people become more and more aware, that click prone percentage drops. And insurance companies love seeing that too, because it's showing progress trending in the right direction in terms of how likely you are to click on something that's going to cost them money.
Absolutely. I have a meeting with a potential client this afternoon, and this client has been hit 3 times in the last 5 months, all through email compromise and phishing attacks. And one of the first things that I plan to work with getting them on is cybersecurity awareness training, because it's pretty evident that their staff doesn't know how to look for what's good in an email and what's bad in an email. And it's so inexpensive and just so important that you have your staff trained.
Well, between that and a really good quality filter that keeps the bad stuff out of the inbox in the first place, I think
Yep.
those two things, multi-factor authentication, right? Turn it
Yep.
on,
Turn it
because
on. It's
be,
free. Just
yeah.
turn it on.
So your example just now, from what I understand of how those breaches took place, had multi-factor been enforced, they likely wouldn't have gotten in. Yeah. And then yeah, so we'll talk about networks too. So from a security audit perspective, we've got a takeaway that we're going to make sure that everybody has access to, but it looks at some key areas within your environment. It looks at the network. The network is, believe it or not, a really important piece of your cybersecurity strategy. So when you're in the office, you think about it, you probably have a firewall. Hopefully that firewall is managed by someone and they're putting some rules in place to maybe block some content, at least segregate the network so that your guests aren't using the same Wi-Fi network as your employees. But here's where Wi-Fi can be a threat vector. So I was thinking about this casino. There was an article that came out. The casino had a list of high rollers that was breached. And the entry point was actually the aquarium heater, which was Wi-Fi enabled because it was a part of this whole smart aquarium system that was making sure that all of the conditions were right to make sure that the fish and corals were happy. But an aquarium heater is likely not going to have awesome cybersecurity protocols. So that became the threat vector. So they basically hacked the heater. They were in the network. They waited until they figured out where they needed to be. They were able to get a hold of a list of the high rollers. So we have to think about our networks when we think about just how connected everything is today. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought an aquarium heater would be connected to the internet in the same way I wouldn't have thought that my fridge downstairs is connected to my Wi-Fi. But they are. We have an Internet of Things. So that whole Internet of Things becomes a new threat vector for our teams. So when we're working remotely, that becomes another point of consideration when we're talking about managed firewalls and some strategies that can be deployed to secure remote work. Within the audit, it's also going to look at endpoints. So endpoint protection, software updates, and what the strategy is around patching, as well as mobile devices. So if we're accessing company data on our phones or iPads, how are we ensuring that that device is compliant? So is it locked? Does it have a passcode on it? Can we wipe it remotely? Is that something that we want to be able to do? Because there's a lot of capability around mobile device management. So it's just something to think about when we're establishing a baseline for where our risks are and deciding which risks are okay and which risks really aren't okay that need to be addressed. And then user protection and education. So that's going to be when we're looking at our audit, we're going to be looking at things like spam filtering and the education that Mandy's been talking about, password management, and if we have password policies. So the audit really addresses people, process, and technology in a nutshell. So that's what it's looking at. And so what we have for you that you can take with you is going to be pretty easy to follow. I think we've done a good job. Our security team did a good job of putting something together that'll help highlight the big ones. And then if you want to talk about any of those, we'd be happy to talk with you in more detail as well.
Yeah. Going back on that, Sam, a couple
Yeah.
other things, that they should address in their security audit when they're doing it is business continuity. In the event
Mm-hmm.
somebody comes in and locks up your data, do you have a backup of that data stored in a different location, whether it's offsite in a cloud, through a partner like Visory, or somewhere else that you can have a backup restored to where you can pick up where you left off? Whether it's of your OneDrive data, your SharePoint data, QuickBooks Online data, QuickBooks Desktop data, you want to make sure that you have a backup somewhere that in the event of a attack, that you're not just completely down. You can roll it, get the backup, put it back out there. You may lose a couple hours, a day's worth of work, from when that last backup was, but you're not completely starting from scratch again. And one other one that I've been hearing more and more often is make sure that you have a process in place when it comes to accounts payable. So more and more I'm hearing of fake invoices that are going to the accounts payable team. I mean, this even happened here to Visory. It looked like it was an email from our CEO to our accounts payable team, one letter off in his last name. And they had a whole email chain to look like Bob was going back and forth with this person that he was going to hire to come in and do some training for the whole company with an invoice of $60,000. But we have a process in place at Visory to where certain amounts, it goes through a couple of different checks before that accounts payable person releases that check. Got all the way up to Bob, and Bob actually had some time that day, so he was going through it extra thoroughly. And thankfully, if not, that check of $60,000 would have just went out. And I talked to another client last week. They lost $17,000. The invoice came in. They knew that they had to pay this invoice, but the bad actor changed the wiring information. So it was legit invoice that they duplicated, changed the wiring information. So make sure you have processes in place to protect yourself from anything like that, because the bad actors are just getting really good out there.
Absolutely. And in our example that you touched on, it even included a W-9. So
Yeah.
for our AP team, it looked super legit. It was everything that they would have needed to get that thing processed. Fortunately, yeah, we do have an approval process and thresholds, and certain
Yep.
things have to go to certain people to get processed. So no matter how legitimate it looks, it does have to follow a process. And that's a great thing for, I think, our accounting friends to be talking about with their clients as well, as some of these best
Absolutely.
practices around threat hunting and mail filtering and having an AP process with approvals that will protect them from those sorts of scams that are becoming all too common.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
cybersecurity is actually now on the test for accountants. So, becoming an advisor of cybersecurity is kind of the way that the accounting firms are moving, because most of the time, accounting clients, their accountant is the only business advisor that they have. They kind of come to you for everything. So the more that you can learn about cybersecurity or partnering with somebody to help you with cybersecurity, the more sticky that client's going to be, because they're going to need that help.
yeah, case in point, one of our accounting friends shared a story that their client, a construction company, was hit with ransomware. Everything was locked up. The very first phone call that they made was to their accountant. Hey, are you doing anything in our system?
Yeah.
No, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so yeah, they sought her out for advice on that. Um, so partnering, so a lot like we're talking about you partnering with your clients on some of this stuff. It's good to have partners that you can rely on too. So there's a lot of benefit that comes from partnering with a managed security service provider like Visory. I'll touch on a couple of those. I'd say one of the biggies is really access to expertise. So even if you have someone in-house, there's a good chance that they're not a system administrator, a cybersecurity director, a Citrix engineer, a Windows endpoint administrator, and what else? A network operations center a staff member that's proactively looking at all kinds of monitors that are going off when your devices might be acting a little funny and taking that proactive approach. So using a partner when it comes to managed security services and managed services really does bring you some cost efficiency, some predictable spend, 24/7 monitoring, someone that you can call anytime, day or night when things are acting up, increased productivity. And I say increased productivity, really what I mean is decreased downtime because of all of the proactive monitoring and management that's taking place. And then access to a wealth of expertise when it comes to everything technology related. So whether you're purchasing a new firm and you need to talk about folding them in as an acquisition, or maybe you're talking about just expanding and adding a new office and you want your networks to be connected. So all kinds of things that a partner in managed security services and managed services can provide for you. Beyond that, it gets into some of the more technical stuff like vulnerability scanning. So while you should be doing regular security audits and understanding where your risk lies and be thinking about how you can mitigate some of those risks, an expert might be able to deploy some tooling that does some vulnerability scanning that looks at every aspect of your environment, from Microsoft to your network to your endpoints to your users, and then being able to do that proactive monitoring and management, and then being a partner to you with when it comes to incident response. So I'd say those are the key benefits to partnering. Mandy, anything you would add?
No, incident response, definitely, one thing if you take away today, well, two things actually. Perform your audit, which means identify your vulnerabilities and put a plan in place to get those taken care of. And the second thing is an incident response plan. So in the event that there is an incident, that you're not just like, oh my God, what do I do now? You pull out the incident response plan, you know who you need to call to get the remediation started, you know what legal authorities you need to reach out to. You already have the letter to your clients ready to go so that you can get that out. Just having that plan already put in place and ready to go in the event of an incident is going to save you so much time whenever you're like in complete freak out mode because the breach has already happened.
Yeah, so I think that's a great recap. We always sort of end with some of our low-hanging fruit from a technology perspective. MFA, Mandy,
Turn it on. It's free.
turn it on. Threat hunting, take a look at what you're doing. Consider if there's something you should be using instead. Training, make sure your teams are trained up. That's going to be super critical, and that's in our security audit as well. So
Drive
those would be three
encryption,
biggies.
drive encryption, drive encryption. It's in your
That's in
computer.
there.
It's free. Just turn it on.
And then backups, so that business continuity that you've been talking about. So here's that QR code. Again, we're going to send this in a follow-up tomorrow, so no worries on that. And I think, Mandy, we've got another thing going on.
Yes, absolutely. Right now we are offering a promo because we believe in that next gen antivirus so much that getting you off a traditional antivirus and onto that managed next gen antivirus is so important that we are offering 3 free months of that next gen antivirus managed detection and response plan to everybody that's attended today. We just really want to make sure that you guys are protected. I don't want to happen to you what happened to that small firm in Georgia. The QR code is actually, the security audit, but it's a checklist. A yes or no. Do you have this? Yes or no. Anything that you have marked no, I would really make it a priority over the next quarter after tax season to get those changed to yeses. It's only going to protect your firm and save you money in the long time. And if you have any questions on what some of that stuff is in the checklist, because I know you're not necessarily, all techy, and sometimes it's over your head, please don't hesitate to reach out to Sam and I. Sometimes it's over my head too, and I got to go to our security engineers, but we'll definitely get your questions answered for you.
And and if you walk through it and you're like, wow, I've got more no's on here than I really think I should. We are offering free cybersecurity consultations through the end of June. So basically all of the next quarter, we're going to be offering those. So it shouldn't take much of your time, 30, maybe 45 minutes. We're going to ask a ton of questions, go through that questionnaire that you've already filled out with you, and see if we can help point you in the right direction, and maybe make some suggestions for you. And if you're interested, we can talk about how we might be able to help fill some of those gaps as well. So feel free to reach out to us for any of the reasons that we just talked about, a free trial for that threat hunting, cybersecurity consultation, or just some general questions as you're walking through the self audit.
Well, we kind of went through that fast. Does anybody have any questions? If not, we're going to give you some time back today. Go out and enjoy that 72-degree weather that's out there.
That's right. Yeah, if you can, take the next 15 minutes, get outside, stretch your legs, everybody.
Yeah.
All right.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.